Oh, good. I was hoping none of that was actually online. Like just me sitting around looking for your page.
No, it's going live now.
It's-
Okay, I think we are live. So, yep, we are. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Simply Spirit. Tonight on the show, I have an amazing guest. She is a psychic medium, and she's also the chapter director of Psychics Unite Columbus, Ohio. And she's also on the board of Psychics Unite. Please welcome Devin Evans.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you. It's so good. I'm so glad to be here. It's awesome to be
Yeah,
back on the show with you.
I'm so
Um,
happy that you're here.
oh, thank you for having me. This is awesome. I'm so excited too about our
Yeah,
topic tonight.
yeah, we are going to be talking about a spiritual awakening and what that means. What is a spiritual awakening? How do you navigate that? Just all things. And here I go with and all that fun stuff.
I mean, the whole term spiritual awakening sounds so blissful and so peaceful.
Right,
And that's, I think, the surprising part.
right. So what happened with you when you did? Well, first of all, let's back up a little bit. Devin, why don't you tell us a little about you?
Oh, I psychic medium. I offer readings from spirit guides and loved ones, and I do one-on-one sessions that they're all aimed at offering guidance and support. A lot of times, people who walk away from my sessions say, "Wow, I really needed to hear that," or "That's exactly what I was curious about." So um, I don't know how it works. I just show up and let spirit work through me, as any good medium does. I first started having experiences when I was a child, and then tricked myself into thinking that I was believing or make believing it all, and just doing a huge, like, world of imagination. So it wasn't until really it's been the last 6 or 7 years that I felt particularly called and pushed to learn more about why I'm so driven and pulled to this line of work, and very interested in helping and serving others. And so my whole story unfolded, and I understood, wow, a lot of my experiences are real. They're not just in my head, they're valid. And there's a lot of information that's coming to me that actually is very meaningful for the people that I'm supposed to sit with. So, with that, I just understood that this is the work that I was intended to do for the rest of my days on this earth in this life. So,
That's
here I am.
yay.
And I
Now,
got to meet you through Psychics
yes,
Unite.
but you also have a show. So tell us
I
about your
do. I knew. You were just talking about it. And I'm like, to do. Um, every Thursday night, I have a show called Truth Bombs. Truth Bombs are those sensations that you get when you hear something that just really resonates with you, and you don't know why, and you don't really care, but you just know, yes, that is my truth. So I cover topics that help us connect to ourselves spiritually, because connecting to ourselves spiritually actually opens us up to more paranormal events and happenings, and we can better understand and relate to what we're experiencing if we go on paranormal investigations, or if we happen to live with a ghost, or if we see the spirit of great Aunt Matilda that's come down to offer her love and support. Um, because there's a whole side to this that I think loses credibility in mainstream media and social norms today. And that's a real shame, because um, I feel very passionate that this is a gift that we're given, and everyone, whether they're on one side of the spectrum or another, everyone has the ability to get messages and impressions and talk to their spirit guides directly. So, but Truth
I
Bumps every Thursday night at 7 Central, 8 Eastern on Shadowhunters Paranormal and Events, Investigations and Events Facebook page.
I'm so glad I'm not the only one who leaves out words on that too. On this
Nope, it's a long one.
I know. It's like, I know it's shadow hunter something, something, something.
Yep.
But it is, you have a great show and you have been such a huge inspiration for me to go out of my comfort zone and to create my own show. So I appreciate that.
Oh,
And
thank you.
yeah. So tonight we're going to be talking about spiritual awakening, what that can mean for you. And, you know, most people, they hear this, but they're not really sure, okay, what does it mean? Or they may be going through a lot of things in their life and they're like, okay, I don't understand what's going on. Can somebody help me? And then when they hear it, that you're going through a spiritual awakening, everything starts to fall into place. Now, for me personally, when I had my spiritual awakening, I mean, things, I guess, really, I can't say that I really had, there was a specific time that I had it because you and I both have been this way our entire lives. But
Yeah.
for others who weren't, and then suddenly they're thrown into this and they don't understand, why am I hearing this? Why am I seeing that? Why am I always thinking about this? You
Yeah.
know, and that's really it. And then sometimes you'll hear people say, I'm going through the dark part of my soul, or the you know, whatever it is, the dark night of the soul, I guess is a good word for it. And really they're stripping away all of the things that they once believed and no longer believe at all. And yeah, so I would love to hear your thoughts on that too, of how that happened. Or have you, what you've heard from others?
Um, I'm so glad that you said that you addressed that you hadn't really gone through that in this lifetime, because what I have experienced is like little mini awakenings. Now I mean, and they vary in degree, small to large. And I think, just having heard you said that, I do think that there was maybe a prior lifetime when we were on our spiritual path, because spiritual journeys are not just completed in one lifetime. I mean, the whole soul journey, the whole soul experience is over multiple lifetimes. Not only do I believe heavily in reincarnation and past lifetimes, but you and I know that we have had prior lifetimes before. I've met other people where I've had prior lifetimes before. You don't, and I'm sure there's everyone watching that at some point in time in their life, they met someone, they're like, I don't know how I know this person, but I know this person. I know that I'm meant to work with this person. I know that I'm meant to talk to this person. I know that I'm meant to go up to this person. You don't just get that if you begin and you end in this one single lifetime. So with that said, I do think that there are lifetimes that we have lifetimes that have significant spiritual awakenings, and dark nights of the soul as we go through our journey. And then after you have that first one, which I'm not going to lie, guys, it can be a doozy, and we'll get into the reasons why. I think after you have that primary one, then when you're reintroduced to the same concepts in your next lifetime, you're very quick to grasp them. You still go through little bits of awakening. Like I've had, maybe my awakening was 2 to 3 months instead of a year or however long, because there's no timeline on this stuff either. It's very individualistic. But I was one of the questions I was going to ask you, because my experience has been, I haven't had just one. I've had small, multiple ones that feel like just like little level ups. And it's like you hit a level and then you sit there and you let that integrate, right? And then you're integrating, you're inching your way up, and then you hit the glass ceiling or the bottom of the next level. And then it's like another awakening when you get through that. And that's a little bit rocky, when you're going through that transition, because what you're doing essentially is you're ending this and you're integrating, or you're starting anew, and you start to integrate that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been more my experience in this lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember, and I'm highly empathetic to that really big initial one, as we start to expand and grow our soul journey and get into some of the topics that your eyes become aware, or your eyes become open to, and your soul becomes aware to.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like understanding in a split second, all at once, that some of the things that you were told were not full truths.
Mm-hmm.
And now all of a sudden in your path, you're ready to start getting exposed to new concepts, things that would maybe freak you out a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And you start becoming very inquisitive. But as you're being inquisitive and you're growing into this, then, like you said, you're also kind of, you're grieving the old, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because with every change, there's a new gained and an old that's lost too.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I totally agree with you on the leveling up. We hear a lot of people ask these questions like, oh my gosh, why is this happening? And then all of a sudden it stops. And it is a leveling up, and it's like, people start to believe, they start to take a look, an inventory of their life of, oh my gosh, why am I doing this? Why am I eating all of these things when I know it's not good for me? How do I change that? And you have so many things coming at you at one time, and then all of a sudden it just stops, and you're like, is this it? And then a few months later, or even a week later, it starts up again, and all of these processes go, and you're like, oh my God, what is going on?
Yeah.
I'm totally losing my mind. Who do I call? How do I get some help? I
Yeah.
mean, that's so true.
Yeah. The big one for me, the big one, oh God, this was so big. Why do I say yes to everything?
Yes.
Someone's like, hey, do you want to do this? And inside I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't feel called to do that. I don't want to do that. I'm not invested in that. But yet my mouth is like, yeah, sure, I'd love to. And then instantly you have now
Mm-hmm.
caused this misalignment, right? And so you're outward. Now you've got to spend a lot of energy not only keeping up the facade outward that you're who you are naturally in your state when things are aligned,
Mm-hmm.
but now internally you're like you're trying to battle down resentment, and you're trying to battle down anger and frustration. um, Having those boundaries, so boundaries was one of the things that I had to learn or relearn in this lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing that, the way I started looking at it was, just because someone invites me to do something doesn't mean I have to accept the invitation.
Right.
Thank you so much for
Exactly.
inviting me to help you. Unfortunately, I'm not able to right now, or I'm not going to right now, but I hope everything works out. And then learning that by saying no, that doesn't make you a bad person.
Right.
It actually saves you from showing up as a person that you're not really, in those situations.
Mm-hmm.
Boundaries is just one thing that you can start looking at. But it's like you said, that whole total inventory of, what am I doing? Why am I doing it?
Correct.
What does this mean? And starting to take deeper looks into all of these different components and areas of your life. That's what's really like comes up during these little moments of awakening.
Right. Exactly.
And
Exactly.
unfortunately, it can all be very uncomfortable.
It can be. And, not only that, I mean, people start to question, when you're in relationships with people or other, friendships, whatever the kind of relationship it is, and you start to find other people, because, I believe that the soul always knows who you're supposed to be in alignment with. And so your soul attracts those people to your life. And then you start to shift from this life of and group of friends to this life. And your group of friends before, they don't understand why you're doing this. And it can be very frustrating. And and you feel guilty. You can feel guilty at times from, walking away from one relationship to have another. And then people start, well, maybe I shouldn't do that. So sometimes I've seen people go from, like, turn away from their spiritual awakening. Like, they just don't want any part of it now because it's painful, like you've said, and it's interrupting their life, and they're used to what was the norm. But at some point, as well as I do, that's going to keep happening, and you've got to answer that call at some point, you know.
Yeah, it's going to become more painful to stay where you're at and resist. It's like a flower that doesn't break through the soil. It's just not meant to grow underneath.
Mhm.
And it does get frustrating when someone looks at you And with sadness or fear comes up a lot when you start changing, but someone points at you and says, you've changed. And unfortunately, yes, that's what we're actually supposed to do. We are not meant to hit a certain level and stay there the rest of our lives.
Mhm.
Um, there's no judgment for anyone who does. I've seen some relationships that they're like this little time capsule and it works really well. That's their journey. But for any of us who start asking some of the questions around spirituality and how our soul connects to us here on earth versus up on the other side, or in the in the paranormal field, when you start having some of those thought-provoking questions, you are changing yourself, you are shifting and you're reorganizing. It's almost like little building blocks inside of you. um, that can get frustrating for our loved ones. I know um, I had to have some really like deep and important conversations with some of my loved ones. While others were like, okay, this is cool. Like they saw hints of this all along. They knew where it was going. They were okay with it. Um, and I'll say I was like, it was an example for them to be able to shift a little bit too.
Right.
Um, and that's the downside. Like if you choose not to, if you are being called to a certain thing and you choose to not take that on, then you are actually like putting a stop to all of the numberless or limitless numbers of people that you would influence and encourage to do their own thing too.
Mhm.
So that's the side of this that we don't see. We see all of it literally is feels like the path less traveled because it can get emotional and tricky and dark and scary and lonesome.
Mhm.
But while you're going through it and as you're going on to the other side of it, the amount of people that you touch, you may never know, but it's there. And
Absolutely.
you will see evidence along the way too. Like it's important for you to do this in this time that you're given to do it.
Right. Absolutely. So what do you say to people come to you and say, "Hey, I'm going through a dark night of the soul. How do I walk through this?" I mean, how do you explain what that is? Or maybe they know, maybe they're not aware of it, or maybe they've heard, "Hey, I've heard this. Is this really what this is?"
Yeah. The first thing I do is if they're open to it is I just give them a big hug because I'm like, oh my baby, come to me. Um, because I think everyone in that position could really use just a big, genuine hug. Um, but I also like to understand a little bit more about what they mean by dark night of the soul, because like I said, it's very individualistic. And one person might, for during their dark night of the soul, they might have to heal through a lot of anger issues.
Hmm.
One person may have to heal through a lot of pain or emotional hurt. Another person may have to heal through really strong, misguided opinions or biases. It's a little bit different for everyone.
Hmm.
The one thing that's consistent is if you are awake enough to say, hey, I'm having these experiences and I'm going through this dark night of the soul and I want help, like that, it doesn't matter what you're working through and there's no judgment anywhere on the board. You're already a new person to say, I recognize what's happening and I want help.
Hmm.
But based on what they will tell me or what they would share with me on their experiences is really going to impact like how I might offer them support.
Hmm.
And also keep in mind, some people just want to talk. They don't really want support, and you respect that too.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's just nice to know that you've got someone to talk to and you're not alone.
Hmm.
Um, but the number one thing I think I would recommend to everyone is um, to give yourself some grace and love and patience,
Hmm.
because we as humans have this amazing habit, and it's actually a trauma response I've come to learn, where we want to rush through the um, the unappeasing or unappealing parts of our lives. So I just want to get it done. I just want to get it done. I just want to rush through it.
Right.
We don't allow ourselves the time to process the feelings that are going to come up during that time. And so what happens is the universe is like, all right, listen, if you're not going to give yourself the time, we're going to give you a little bit more to make you have to take the time. That usually shows up in health concerns. I can't tell you how many times I've thrown my back out because I was pushing myself too far and too quick. And when your back is out, all you've got to do for 5 days is lay in bed and nurse it back to health. Man, that's a lot of time to process the stuff that comes up. So understand that when you are there and you're feeling these really tricky feelings, it's okay to be uncomfortable with them, but it's very important to still be with them. And what that looks like is giving yourself some solitude away from others if you can. And I know we could talk about how tricky that is for like single moms. But giving yourself the space to be able to acknowledge, okay, I'm angry. I'm angry. I'm not going to get violent about it, but I'm angry. And this is why I'm angry. And I'm not going to judge why I'm angry. And I'm not going to really overprocess why I'm angry. I'm just going to feel the anger. Right? Because what happens in those moments is that it comes up and you feel it intensely for about 15 to 30 seconds, maybe a full minute. And then as long as you can stay present with it enough to feel it, it literally dissipates. And that's what it means to process and let go of your feelings.
Absolutely.
And I know it sounds simple to explain all of this, but I was never taught all of this.
Right. No, and I don't think anybody ever is. I don't think we're ever taught how to do any of that. And I also think that we're also taught that you just deal with things and you go on. Like we've never been taught to say it's okay to feel that anger, that pain, whatever it is, you just don't live there. You feel what you got to feel, you work through those emotions, and then you pick yourself up and you move on. And it doesn't happen overnight. Nobody's saying, okay, well, you have this one day, you can grieve and cry and scream and do whatever you want to do. But then tomorrow you got to be over it. It doesn't work that way. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't get. And I think there's a lot of men that don't go through that. And they're experiencing all this, but their ego won't allow them to go there. Be like, oh, no, I'm not going through that. I'm not having no spiritual awakening. I'm not, experiencing all this stuff. All is good and great. And, they keep going. So you're right. We're never taught that.
Yeah. Our society, right. Our society does not perpetuate mental health days. Our society doesn't perpetuate emotional health days. If you wake up and you're feeling strong feelings, none of us really have the luxury of saying, I'm sorry, but I'm going to be 2 hours late while I process the sadness. You could be without a job. So then we are taught that we have to shut it down. And, when you go back to revisit it that day, you may not have, it's going to take more energy for it to come up and come out.
Yeah.
So some of the practical ways that we can work around that a little bit is, and I feel like a broken record. I think everyone knows what I'm about to say. It starts with M and ends in meditation, but
hey girl, I go there too. I'm right there. I mean, literally, you and I finish each other's sentences. So,
that's when you're onto something. Meditation is one of those things. There's probably, I could list 100 things that meditation helps you with, but especially during this, and one of the reasons why these awakenings feel so uncomfortable is because it is a transition. You're literally in between what was and what's about to be. And that's important. I want to comment more on that in just a minute, but meditation helps us to be present, and it helps us not to freak out when something comes up during a time that we weren't expecting it. And I think meditation also helps us to fortify ourselves and seek comfort and rejuvenation within our own energy. And it helps us, because what's happening is, even if you don't actively work with your spirit guides, that meditation allows them to help you even more. So you don't have to know your spirit guide's name. You don't even have to know you have spirit guides. That meditation allows you to still receive their benefits more than you would without it. And that's really important too, because as you're kind of going through all of these ugly bits and these uncomfortable bits, they will put things in your path that give you small moments of comfort and hope. Like, okay, I am reminded that this isn't going to be forever. Like, nothing stays the same. Energy is always moving, energy is always constant, right? And constantly changing. So if you're in a low place now, take comfort, if in nothing else, that this will not be forever. It may not be over quickly, but it won't be forever. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. Your main priority is to make sure that you're well cared for and tended to as you go through like this unfamiliar path. Um, a lot of times when I am going through a spiritual awakening or a leveling up, I feel so antsy. I want to do something, but I don't know what to do. And it's that tear between what was and what's about to be. It's like you're starting to already get drive to actively take action and change and to do things differently, but you don't necessarily know what that could look like. So then you start doing weird things like cleaning out that junk drawer and making a huge mess. And then like all of a sudden you're detailing your car, and
Exactly.
those are things too. But you also have to remember too that um, those are practices that we sometimes put in place to also ignore what's coming up
Yeah,
too.
it can be a big distraction.
Yeah. Um, it's I really feel like one of the mottos is be comfortable with discomfort, or get comfortable with discomfort, because I think the biggest thing that I'm feeling called to share with everyone is to remind yourself it's going to be okay. I'm safe. I'm not in any danger. The universe has my back. I have friends in high places, literally. Um, and then just talking yourself into that place where you're feeling a little bit more secure during those really intense moments where it's just like, what do I do?
Hmm. Absolutely. And the other thing too is that, you can always shift your perspective on things. I mean, we always think everything is the most horrible in the world. And you can shift that by changing your thoughts and looking at it from a different perspective. And the other thing too is to raise your vibration when you're having those moments of, sadness or whatever it is. And when life gets to be too much, do something that's fun, that's going to raise your vibration. And then you're going to be able to look at that in a different way and realize that it's not the end of the world. And today, it's going to get better, because you're right. We're not stuck in that mindset forever. We all have free will to change our mindset and to change the way that our life goes just by changing how we think about things.
Yeah. Literally, like I'm a real big one on analogies. And to me, spiritual awakenings can sometimes be like a hospital stay. So you've had the big boom that caused you to go into the hospital, and you're in the hospital and you're just doing the recovery time. Um, and then when you released, that big boom may have caused some changes in your life, and so things are a little bit different. It was part of your processing time as you were kind of in the recovery room.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and just as you would, so another suggestion that I would have for others is that really, really, please, really get into the habit of speaking to yourself like you would your child or your best friend or your brother or your sister, your mother.
Yeah.
Look at how, like, if your mom was sick, or if your daughter or your son was sick, or your best friend, someone that you just love unconditionally, how would you treat them? What would be some of the things that you say to them?
Mm-hmm.
And literally have those same conversations with yourself. Like, my internal dialogue could literally be a sitcom, but I promise you, it works. It helps when I'm sitting there going, honey, I know you're not feeling well. What's going on? And then I'm like, okay, well, I'm feeling really anxious and I'm tired and I don't want to do this right now. I know you don't want to do this, but can you imagine how amazing it's going to be when you get to the other side? And give yourself those pep talks. It
Mm-hmm.
sounds ridiculous, but I can't tell you how many times I have felt so much better just knowing that I am there for myself
Mm-hmm.
and showing up for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that I think is one of the biggest self-care items, along with eating well, getting light exercise, all of the things that you might do if you're trying to mend or recover from something else.
Mhm.
Um, all of that will help you process anything that's coming up and help you integrate any new theories or components or ideas that might be given to you in that moment too.
Mhm.
Um, I had another point, but I lost it. So I'll pause here.
It happens. It happens to us all. But I mean, it's so true. How can you take care of others if you don't take care of yourself?
But we
You
do.
know, and maybe what you're saying, maybe that what it doesn't sound silly. Let me say it this way. It doesn't sound silly because we do have a higher self, and we do get messages from that higher self. That helps us through and guides us through whatever it happens to be, however you want to look at it. But we do have a higher self that has all of the information and can access all of that and just sends us downloads just like our guides do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I look at it as it's just you having a conversation with your higher self.
Honestly, though, too. And Scotty and I have actually talked about, he's got some theories on higher self. And, the more that I get into this, I think higher self is another form of like your subconscious. Like your
Mhm.
subconscious is always so much more aware and wise and calm, and then it's not freaking out over the spilt milk or the missed
Exactly.
stoplight. Um, and then like meditation, going back to meditation, that really does help you tap into your subconscious. It helps quiet that barrier between your conscious and subconscious and helps you to get that information a little bit more readily available. And so when you do go to have conversations with yourself like that, it just I literally in conversations like that have received suggestions from myself that I hadn't thought about.
Mhm.
So I know what you mean is true. Like, oh yeah, I wouldn't have thought to do that, but that sounds amazing. So I'm going to do that today. Um, and then another way to do that, if you're not comfortable having that conversation with yourself, just write yourself a letter and do journaling. Journaling saves
Mhm.
my life a lot,
Mhm.
especially when I'm just in that moment, really processing. And no one's ever going to see it. If you think they are, immediately burn it up or flush it down the toilet afterwards, but just get it down
Absolutely.
on paper.
Absolutely. There is someone that I talked to years ago, and she wrote a book called Journaling the Soul. And she talks about how every day you show up at the same time and you just write. You set yourself, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever, maybe you've got an hour, but you do it every single day at the same exact time in the same exact spot. If you're upstairs, downstairs, wherever you happen to be writing, that's where you write every single day. And it doesn't matter what you write, you just write whatever comes to mind. And it doesn't have to make any sense, but once you do that, it can change your life. I mean, you really start to get to the what's really bothering you deep down inside. You may not admit it to anybody else, you may not admit it to yourself, but in that journal, you know that you can write whatever you want and nobody's going to see it, and why lie to yourself? Just write it down. Just begin. That's all you have to do. And the other thing is that once you start doing this for 30 days, it becomes a habit.
Mhm.
And if you look back at all the things, you'll start to see a pattern of things that has been on your mind, but you just don't want to address. And at some point you have to address it. So
Yeah.
I mean, I agree. Journaling is something that is just amazing. I mean, it's right up there with meditation. Which in a sense it is a form of meditation.
Yeah.
So
I often do them together. I'll meditate and then I'll journal about my experiences, and I get even more information while I'm journaling about my experiences in meditation.
mhm,
Um, the whole point in meditation and journaling, what you're doing is you're disrupting the pattern. You're
mhm,
stopping the pattern long enough to be able to question and to get that information, which is really important when you're going through transitions, because you can't necessarily rely on the way you had been doing things, and you're still figuring out on the way that you're supposed to be doing things.
mhm,
And that could get frustrating in and of itself. So the other thing too, obviously, is if you're going through this process and you're feeling very upset, um, or you're just kind of struggling to, you know, go through this transition is reaching out to others and talking with them. It's very, very important. I know sometimes it's difficult. I sometimes get in the habit of keeping my mouth shut because I don't want to spend the energy it would take to explain something to someone when it's about myself. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but I'm feeling kind of nuts today. Or I'm just like, I can't sit still, but I don't want to do anything. And it's always that extreme too. Like it's just that I can't explain it. It's you just never know what you want to do. Nothing ever sounds good. And just sitting where you're at also doesn't sound good. Um, but the more that you can kind of get that out and talk to someone or have friends, and that's why I'm so grateful to have met you and so many other beautiful souls through Psychics Unite, and having the beautiful support group that I have, of people that I knew prior to that. Like there's always someone, even if it's just a text message, like, girl, I am like, ah! And
Right.
just even that little act kind of helps you, um, come to terms or just acknowledge that I'm not necessarily okay. I think I know I'll be okay, but right now I just need a little extra support. Reaching out to others is really, really important.
Yep, I agree. I agree. And I was just gonna bring up Psychics Unite too.
I We're on the same page
Phew!
again.
Of course.
It's so weird.
I mean, if we weren't on the same page, I'd be like, what
That
the
would be
heck is
weird.
going on today?
Well, and I was thinking earlier, we were just talking about doing some joint stuff together, and I'm like, it would be a really fun episode is finding the one thing that we disagree on, that what that would look like if we talked about something that we disagree on. Like I don't know what that would even look like.
I don't even have a clue. Maybe on different ways to fix something, to cook something. That might be it, but
I thought food. I thought food too. Like maybe fruit, something that we like, don't like. Yeah. It would be a ridiculous debate that nobody would be interested in.
that would be too funny. Hey, that could be a great blooper segment.
I'm telling you, oranges.
No apples. Oh my god, it's too funny. So my question is, what do you think of people who suddenly have vivid dreams and they don't understand? Like, have you literally had people come to you and say, I'm having these vivid dreams, I don't understand it, totally freaking out because they think the worst? Like they think people are dying or they're dying or something,
Yeah,
and trying to explain to them that's not what that means.
I know. No, and yeah. So the first thing I like to point out is there's a lot of things happening when we dream. And depending on the dream state, number one, it's never really a premonition for doom or gloom. So that should be the last thing that you consider. What's more likely happening during this time of transition when you're going through a spiritual awakening, if you're having vivid dreams and you're getting a lot of information in those, your subconscious, again, because when we sleep, our subconscious, our higher self is able to get to us a little bit easier. We will get messages from our higher selves and our spirit guides. But at the same time, simultaneously, we're also kind of clearing the dust off from the day. So sometimes my dreams will actually be both informative with downloadable information, but also ridiculous and absurd. And it's just understanding that part of this process is getting to know yourself well enough to be able to discern what is important versus what is just cleaning from the day. And what that looks like really is just, again, through meditation or spending that time with yourself, developing your ability just to know yourself and know your energy. You can get a very good sense on what to pick up and what not to. But anyone who's coming to me with like really big concerns about the quality of their dreams or the content of their dreams, the first thing I tell them to do is like, well, don't panic, don't panic. I think it's usually a mix of that mind processing and some information, and I help them pick that out. First thing I like to do is ask them to point out, well, what feelings did you have during the dream? Or what impressions, what things stuck out to you, and why did it stick out to you? Um, Things like colors or symbolism that's repeated throughout the dream that might have some significance. And I just kind of walk through because honestly, I don't have the answers. I mean, I can sometimes intuitively know how to guide them, but really, everyone who has this, who's experiencing their own dreams actually knows the content behind it. They
Mhm,
just may need a little help getting there and understanding it more so.
mhm. Absolutely. So we have someone in the that's making has a comment or has a question. Just any tips for meditation? And I'm sure we can give a lot of those.
Well, do we have 2 more
Where do
hours?
we start?
Well, we could shotgun this. We could all right, start small. What's your tip, Jen?
Right. Just start.
Yeah, just start.
Even if it's just 1 minute, or you can only sit quietly for three, just a minute or a second or a couple of seconds. Don't think that you have to empty your mind. And you hear that a lot, and it's like, please stop thinking that you don't have to empty your mind to meditate. So that would be my one tip just to start.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you got it. Always understand patience. And I'm one of the, or have been in the past, one of the most impatient people in the world. Jen, you and I are both fire signs, so we want what we want, and we want it now, and
Yes,
we want
absolutely.
to just blow through everything to get it. Meditation doesn't work like that. Meditation's more like a cat. You just kind of got to sit in the room until it feels comfortable coming to you. And you might have some good days with meditation. You might have, and good and bad is
Mm,
another misnomer you'll get acquainted with
mhm,
through your spiritual awakenings. But you might have some days that you think are good, some days that you think are bad. There are no right or wrong ways to do it.
mhm,
I think there are different things that you can try out,
mhm,
and you can try chanting, which helps kind of keep the thoughts clear. And you can, there's just chanting over and over again, and doing that for 5 minutes, that helps immensely. The biggest thing is that when thoughts do pop in your head, because they're going to, I like to, to me, they come as like kite tails. Just don't grab onto the tail. Just let that thought come in and then blow right on back out. Just like, thank you for coming, please leave. And then Scotty has a imagery that he likes to put the thoughts in a basket that's next to you, whatever works for you.
mhm,
I've used the imagery of dropping a leaf down into a brook that carries the leaf off.
mhm.
Just don't, if your grocery list pops in, don't roll with it. Just like, oh, that's interesting. And then come back to whatever. You can
Right.
focus on your breath, um,
On a
and
candle flame.
on a candle flame. You can just do a walking meditation
Mhm,
and focus on your steps. And what
mhm.
that looks like is just being very present on your footsteps and rolling your heels and one step at a time. And then what's the quality of the sidewalk that you're on? What are the noises that you hear? And just being very present and not getting carried away with your thoughts, because that's the basic concept of meditation.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And you know, i- some people think that you have to be sitting. I mean, a lot of times I like do this every day. When I'm in the shower, I'm not thinking of anything at all. And that's where I get the most of my downloads. And just sitting quietly, you don't even have to close your eyes. You don't have to be focusing on your breath, a candle, anything. Just sitting quietly in itself is a form of meditation. It's
Yes, it
really
is.
just quieting the mind so that you can just be present in the moment.
So I agree with that 100%. And actually, what I've been experiencing lately is as I'm going through these transitions, these spiritual transitions, if there's a day or a moment where, man, I don't know what is wrong, I can't put my finger on it, but I am not happy. Something's not right. There's general unrest within me, right? That's when I'm going to just sit on my bed And I do for that moment close my eyes because that's just what works for me. But I fully agree. You don't have to close your eyes, but I'm just going to take a deep breath and I'm going to scan my body.
Mhm,
And the moment I find where that general unrest is in my body, I just sit with it. And that over time, just sitting with it and just focusing on that and clearing your mind,
mhm,
that's when it starts to come up that, oh, there's this thing that happened to me when I was a kid that is now coming up for me to take a look at.
mhm,
Or, oh, that's why that thing that happened yesterday bothered me. So that it's an example of the reason why meditation is so important, or one of the reasons why meditation is so important, because it really does help you, like what our society lacks, and it's not just society, what human nature often lacks is presence
mhm,
and just being in the here and now. And
mhm,
I think that's the reason why a lot of people are uncomfortable with journaling, because that means they literally have to focus on every loop or every letter, and they have to put that thought into paper, and it forces them to be present. But that is the number one key to be able to working through some of these big emotions that come through and some of the big concepts that you're trying to integrate.
mhm. Something else that you can try too is yoga.
Mm,
Yoga is a great way to kind of get into a meditative state. And, there's just some simple poses that you can do. And it's just amazing. But, it's entirely up to you. There is no right or wrong way to do it. It just is what feels right for you. Some people like to do a guided meditation, some people can't do a guided meditation. Some people need to listen to a certain type of music. Some people prefer not to. Some people prefer to go for a hike. I mean, there's so many different ways, but it's all individual to you. You just have to try different things and see what works for you.
yeah.
You know.
And that's where the patience comes in. Don't get frustrated with yourself if you try something and it doesn't work, and try not to get discouraged either. You're just finding what works for you. It's really like a euphemism for life. As
Mhm,
we grow up and we come out, and as my daughter's about to turn 18, this is like really hitting home, but as we grow up and we leave our parents' homes, and we then start to figure out, well, do I like Thai food? No, I don't. Do I like this food? It's just a matter of defining and discovering yourself only on a spiritual nature. You're taking your journey into a spiritual nature, and less of a 3D practical nature.
mhm. But that's also what comes into the spiritual awakening when you get to know yourself, because that's
Hmm.
what the spiritual awakening really is all about, is stripping away those thoughts and ideas and stuff that our parents taught us and that we believed because we didn't know any different. We were a child, so we believed and followed along with what our parents did. And then as we become adults, we start to strip away all of those things, and we become who we are supposed to be and who we're meant to be in this lifetime. And so a lot of people, that's one of the things that happens with the spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then once you get past all of that, and then it's just absorbing, and then it's like you want to do it
Freedom.
all, right? Exactly. You want to do it all. You want to learn everything at one point in time. And but then that also leads to, as you know as well as I do, because we both teach, when it comes to the clairs, and learning to be all the things that we are, and learning how to deal with being an empath. They want
Yeah.
to jump from, okay, well, let's do this now, let's go over here and do readings automatically, and it's like, nope, back up. Take it back up,
Yeah.
about 5 pieces. Let's start from the very beginning and work
Yeah.
our way forward. But that's what happens. They find so much information and they want to do it all, and you just can't, you know?
Well, and the thing too is that when you start coming into, so now I love that we're talking about this, because we've gone into some detail about how to support yourself through the ugly bits, and now that you're on the other side of it, you're like, oh, thank God I'm here and I'm stronger and I'm different, and now I'm noticing all of these new, beautiful, fascinating concepts,
Mhm,
and you do want to do it all at the same time.
mhm,
Um, but what I have found is, at this stage of your awakening on the other side of the downward hill, I have noticed that you'll be led to the parts that you're supposed to do first. So, and it's circular too. It's not linear. You're not going to hit Akashic records and then never hit it again. Like I was first introduced to Akashic records back in my 20s, early 20s. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And I experimented with some of the meditations, and I don't even remember what information I got from it, but I did. I got some information, and I'm like, all right, cool. And it wasn't going to be until like 18 years later when I actually get my first real Akashic Records reading from someone who's certified to do it. And that was a completely different experience.
Mhm.
So, one of the best pieces of advice is that my spirit guides gave me that I think is applicable to everyone. And I know a lot of people in the group are like, oh my God, she's going to say this again, but it's true. So, um, they said, always acknowledge your experiences.
Mhm.
Always acknowledge your experiences, which means you have an experience and you're like, well, yes, that did happen. I'm acknowledging that that happened, and that's the information I got from it, and that's what feels right to my soul, and that's what I'm going to go with. But the second half of the advice is always be open to learning more about it down the road.
Mhm.
So like if today I learn that so if today I learn about Akashic records and I learn that they're there and what they are, um, and if you have questions on Akashic records, Jen did an amazing video on that a couple weeks ago, so go check that out.
Thank you.
But if you have questions, like if I learned today that the only way that I can reach my Akashic records is to have someone read them for me, if that's the message I got from my guides, then that's what I'm going to roll with. And then if like 18 months down the road or even 30 years down the road, I hear now you can actually access them yourself, and here's how, then that's what I've just learned, right? So it's important to acknowledge what information you get out of your experiences, but also know that you're going to pick up more information because it's given to us in pieces as we go through this spiral, and
Absolutely.
we continue to hit these different points in the spiral.
Absolutely. And the other thing too is, you're going to read a lot of books. I mean, every one of us has done it. We find the books because we don't know where to go. Well, there is a place that you can go, and we'll get to that very soon. There is a place that you can go that you can get help with all of this stuff. But before this point, Devin and I'm sure like a lot of you, we were just reading everything and anything that we could get our hands on to find out things. But here's the problem that you're going to run into. You're going to read something and you're going to be like, but that doesn't resonate with what I feel or what I think or anything else. And that's okay. It's okay to not resonate with something. Take whatever that it works for you and leave the rest.
Yes, yes,
I mean,
yes,
there
yes.
is no right or wrong. And when you start to develop something, if you're working on clairvoyance and you're trying one thing, if you're trying to focus on a place that you've never been to and it doesn't work out for you right now, then let it go and try something else. There is no right or wrong on that. So,
I couldn't agree more. And that's another thing too. Like you can read a whole book, and if there's one chapter that just really hits you and you're like, yes, and nothing else resonates, that's okay too.
mhm,
You can sit with yourself, understand more about why that one portion resonates so much and why the others didn't. And you don't have to, just because you disagree with someone doesn't mean you have to judge them. It doesn't mean you have to try and convert them. That's the beauty of this work. We are all individuals that are connected at a higher place.
mhm,
But because we're having individual experiences down where we're at,
mhm,
what they're doing is not actually going to affect us. And I think when I think about right or wrong, really the only wrong that I can think of is like if you're hurting yourself or others.
absolutely.
If you are constantly showing up with the intention of just loving yourself and showing love to others, you cannot do any wrong.
Mhm,
Um, it's one of those things where you can just experiment away. Now, in your process, if you're having experiences that scare you, that intimidate you, if some of the messages that you get are a little lower vibration or negative, that's also something to address, because I think that's like a quality of the energy that you're bringing in or the quality of the energy that you're having in that moment. And it's not wrong. But we have to realize that when we're going through this work, I don't care who you are, where you've come from, or where you're at, you are always perfectly protected as you are. So
Mhm.
not only do you have the power within you to stop anything that uh, presents itself to you in a negative pattern, but you have hundreds of angels and spirit guides and animal spirits that are there right along with you, whether you can feel them or see them or not. So the only way that you can allow something negative to remain negative in your life is if you, or the only way that something negative could remain in your life is if you allow it. So there's also a personal power that comes along with this too.
Mhm. So we had another question. Stevie wanted to know, how does she recognize her spirit guide? Like, she feels there's one around her, but she's not really sure what are the signs of that. So what would you recommend?
The way that I first was introduced to my spirit guides and being able to see their face and agree upon a name that I talk to them in, and keep in mind, everyone, none of this really matters. It's just things that help us connect to them deeper, but really they don't care as long as we hear them. Um, is through meditation. I feel like the answer, it doesn't matter if the answer is what's two plus two, or the question is what's two plus two. The answer is always going to be meditation. But there are certain guided meditations that you can do. And I think I posted one that I did in my show a couple weeks ago on my business page, Devin Evans Psychic Medium, on Facebook. But there's a guided meditation that basically you can walk yourself through an imagery of two chairs sitting on a beach. And there's no one else on the beach. They're under an umbrella, and it's a beautiful, perfect beach day. And you're just slowly walking up to one of the chairs, clearing your mind, taking deep breaths, taking in all of the sights and the sounds and the smells of the beach. And you sit down and you're just relaxed in this peaceful state. And as you're looking out into the water, you can feel someone of a pure, loving quality approach from behind you. And it just feels like, I don't know, like your grandparents or someone, it's that quality of love. Um, and you just continue looking out over the water. And as they approach and they come around, they sit in the chair next to you. And that's when you look over and you can see your guide.
Mhm.
And then when you see them, you just have a conversation like Jen and I are having a conversation now. Oh my God, it's so good to see you. And it should feel like reuniting with an old friend. What's your name? And here's the thing about spirit guides. Um, you have a primary guide that's with you from the moment you're born in this life to the moment you leave. And then you've got lots of guides that pop in and out that help you with specific things. So, like, I had a guide one time that helped me with self love. There are guides that help us with things like confidence, or there are guides that help us have fun or learn joy, because all of these things are very important to our personal path and our spiritual path.
Mhm.
So you can understand a little bit better about which guide has sat with you. And then developing a relationship with them from there on out is literally just talking to them. And you don't have to be in meditation to talk to them. I talk to my primary guide named Daniel all the time. And I'm like, oh, Daniel, I did not have a great day. Or, oh, Daniel, this was an amazing trip. Like, and, you know, usually what happens, because one of my clairs is clairaudience, so I hear a lot. Um, Often when I'm talking to them, I'll hear them reply. So, and it just pops into my head. Some people with clairaudience, it pops into their ears. Both are completely valid. And those, again, those messages will always be loving. And sometimes we can provide hard messages through love, but it'll never be scary or negative um, or without love. So,
Mhm. And something that I have done to connect one of my guides, when I, like my very first guide, my main guide, was during a meditation right before I went to bed. Again, here we go with the meditation. I did my meditation and I invited my guide to talk to me and connect with me in my dreams. And the reason for that is because in your dream state, you're at your most relaxed state. So that's why a lot of times you will have messages and visitations from your loved ones, is because you are so, you're not focused on, oh my gosh, I got to get up for at this time for this, to go to work, or I have to fix dinner, or all of these other things. You don't have any of that going on. So your mind is just completely relaxed, and it allows for them to enter the dream state so that they can deliver messages. And it's the same way with your guides. And that's actually what I did. And I was able to not only connect with my guide, but see who my guide was. And I've never looked back. I mean, like Devin, we just have a continuous conversation. It's not like, well, I can't talk to you until I go to meditation.
Right. Right.
And it doesn't work that way. I mean, let's be real. Her guide goes and talks to Scotty. Scotty's guide comes and yells at us
all the time.
Oh, yeah. Exactly.
With love.
Exactly. When we're not, he doesn't really yell. He just kind of like says, hey, you're supposed to be doing this. Why didn't you do this yet?
Yeah.
We're getting there.
Like a jab, jab, jab. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. We're getting there. We're getting there. It's just taken us a little bit of extra time, but hey.
I mean, we're not stubborn or anything.
Oh, no, not at all. So that's some of the things that you can do. And the other thing too is another thing that I have done is to visualize a blackboard. Again, we're going to go back to meditation because that's where you're going to see it. And ask your guide to write his or her name on the blackboard, and go with whatever name comes to you. Don't overthink it. I have a lot of people who overthink it, and they're like, well, it can't be that easy. My guide can't be called Sally. I mean, we're expecting seriously, I'm sure I'm not the only one where people think that they have to have this really long, drawn out name that you can't even pronounce. And I mean, sometimes that might happen, but it can be really simple.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it can be. And honestly, I'll be straight up with you. Your guides actually don't care about any of that as long as you're connecting with them. Absolutely. Their primary goal is for you to hear them. Now, the deeper that you can connect with them, the better the experience for both of you. But can you imagine having a best friend that you can never see or hear, and how frustrating that would be for them when they are like, girl, you needed to make a left back. Left. I need to make that left sometime, please, for the love of all that's holy, hear me. So often I think they will pick like my guide. And again, I don't want to complicate things, but my guide has chosen an image that I knew him from a previous lifetime. But since then, as we've gotten to know each other, he's shown me images from other lifetimes. And, I think all of that has just given me insight to the type of relationship that I have with him on the other side, and how we're developing and growing with each other here in this lifetime. And that what you're working on really is just building up that trust. Right. Because when you wake up one morning and your guide's like, I need you to eat an orange and then walk down the street.
Not an apple.
You got to trust that, like, you don't want to question that, because apparently something that you're aligned for will unfold during that time, even if it doesn't look like it in that moment. And then sometimes they just want to be like, haha, I got her to walk down the street. Did you see that?
Right.
Exactly. And that's okay too. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think they show themselves in a way that we're comfortable with. If we're not comfortable with certain things, they're not going to appear to us in that manner. And the same way with your loved ones, if you're not comfortable seeing them, at the age that they were, or whatever it happens to be, they're not going to present themselves to you in that manner, especially if you've never met them. That might freak you out a little bit, be like, I don't even know you, and you're here. What's up with this?
Well, interestingly enough, so here's the thing about loved ones. Loved ones aren't necessarily, they can be a spirit guide of sorts. They're there. Loved ones can pass on and transition to the other side. And they can choose to say, you know what, I'm not going to reincarnate until my current soul family is taken care of. Like, I have a grandmother on my mother's side who watches over me. And I have a grandfather on my father's side who watches over me. Now, the interesting thing is, my grandfather my grandfather in this lifetime passed away around the time I turned one, just within like a month or two of when I turned one. So I never really got to know him. But what I understood was one of the earlier guides that I had met when I was just dabbling with that. I got to know his name, I got to know his image. I had never known him before in that image, that kind of thing. And so I knew that he was hanging around all this time. And then over the last couple of years, when I got really serious about being with my guides and getting to know them and getting to know them better, I come to find out that this guide was actually my paternal grandfather. Looks nothing like he did in this lifetime, does not have the same name as he did in this lifetime. But the reason why he chose to do that is because he knew the time in my life that he had presented himself to me. I would not have believed it was him.
Mhm.
I was more apt to believe that the stranger, or this, this loving being I had never met on this earth, would come to me than a grandfather that I had no relationship with that I could remember. And
Mhm.
so that's just an example of how they will, they're always working in your highest and greatest good. They are always there, um, helping you to succeed,
Mhm.
because when you succeed, they succeed, and we all win, and everyone's spiritually happy. My grandmother, on the other hand, she appears to me like she did, as I remember her. She passed away, I think, when I was about 8 or 9. Um, and I even remember just a few months ago, she had emphysema. And I remember there towards the end, it was how hard it was for her to walk just short distances. And the person I was talking to at the time was like, wow, it's really hard to remember her that way. And my head just filled with, then don't. And so my grandma was like, you don't have to remember me that way. You don't have to think about that way, because I've left all that behind.
Mhm.
And even though I've chosen this image, she doesn't have nearly any of the struggles that she had when she was here on Earth.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, and sometimes when you're having your spiritual awakening, you will experience things like that, and it can be a little alarming. And and there's so much to learn about everything. And as Sandy pointed out, I do want to make sure that we say this: practice, practice, and practice, as Scotty tells us over and over and over too.
yeah.
We
Yep.
have to practice in order to make it as perfect as we can. That's how that always works. But for all of you who are going through a spiritual awakening and you're wanting to know where you can turn to get some help, to have some people who understand what you're going through, there is a place that Devin and I are part of, and it's called Psychics Unite. And it's an organization that is a safe place for all of us. We can go and talk about the things that we're going through, not just our spiritual awakening, but we can talk about general everyday life of things that are happening. Because just because you are a spiritual person doesn't mean that you don't have things that happen in your life the same as everybody else, because believe me, we do, and then some.
Mhm.
So I
Yes.
mean, what do you want to say on that, Devin?
Well, I can't stress enough how much of an open, loving environment Psychics Unite is. I highly encourage. I think a lot of people, I get the sense that whenever we bring Psychics Unite up, a lot of people are like really intimidated. These are meetings. These all chapter meetings are held every Monday night in Zoom. If it makes you more comfortable, you don't even have to put your camera on. Now, eventually, I mean, we love to see each other's faces, but if it makes you more comfortable at first, just show up and announce yourself and sit back and see what it's like. Um, we are, I have found more support and more, what's the word I'm looking for? Not camaraderie, but basically more in common through this spiritual journey in just the last 11 months than I have in the last 20 years of my own and finding my way. So it really is a place that if you've got questions on things like meditation, spirit guides, if you're having experiences and you don't know what to think about that or how to feel about that, if you have any questions whatsoever, like Psychics Unite is it's a very open and kind free resource.
Absolutely.
And then as we're always growing, we have chapters throughout the Midwest, and we're continuing to grow those out. So I think everything's kind of been dampened at the individual chapter levels just over the last 12 months with COVID and that kind of thing, but we're starting to get things back up. And if there's a chapter in your area, then we would be happy to get you introduced to that local group as well.
Absolutely. And, as I said at the very beginning, Devin is the chapter director for the Columbus, Ohio area. And I'm the chapter director for the southeastern part of Indiana. And there are other chapters in Indiana. There are other chapters in Ohio. There are chapters in several different states. And if you don't have a chapter in your area, you're more than welcome to be part of any of our chapters, and especially be part of the all chapter meetings, as Devin has said. Devin also has her chapter meetings every other Wednesday, correct?
It is. Yep. Our next one is not this Wednesday because we just had one last week. So it'll be the Wednesday after that. Give me a second. It will be the 17th. And so if you're interested in joining a smaller session, because chapter meetings just started a couple months ago. So if you're interested in seeing what a smaller session is like, just to kind of check that out, you're more than welcome to check out Columbus, Ohio. We have a Psychics Unite, it's Psychics Unite OH Columbus Facebook page. And I also have the details on a meetup.com. So if you go out to meetup.com and you type in Psychics Unite Columbus, you'll find us there too.
And then if you're in Indiana, I have one this coming Thursday. Again, it's the opposite weeks of Devin. So this way, and the reason for that is because if Devin needs to be somewhere, I can help and vice versa. That's kind of how that works. We do try to help each other out, and that's the way Psychics Unite is. Everybody helps everybody out. There's no egos there. I mean, that's all just set aside when we go into those meetings, and we're all just one big happy family. Now, I do want to make sure that you all know where you can get in touch with Devin. So Devin, if you will give all of that great information.
Oh, thank you. I am available through Devin Evans Psychic Medium on Facebook. Just Google Devin Evans Psychic Medium and you'll find my business page there. It's got all my show information and, pieces of my mind, a little small lives here and there. And you can book me through there if you're interested in a one-on-one session. I also have a website, devinevans.com. And you can find my social media through there. There's links to it there. I'm on Instagram through it's Devin E Medium, so it looks like Divine Medium. And Twitter I think has the same handle too. So really and then you'll always catch me out in the ether during my meditations. You can drop into one of those too.
Absolutely. And don't forget, on Thursday night, she has Truth Bunks on Shadow Hunters Paranormal Events. Is that right?
It's Shadow Hunters Paranormal Investigations and Events. Facebook page, yeah.
Yes, it's on that channel. And then on Monday nights, we have our Psychics Unite meeting at 6:30 Central.
Central. Yep.
6:30 Central, 7:30 Eastern Standard Time, and that's on Mondays. That's every single Monday. And then on Tuesday, we start out with Sharon with her Oracle Tuesday, and that's on the Shadow Hunters Paranormal Investigations and Events page.
Yeah, good job.
7 Central. And then on Wednesday, we have Scotty Rourke with his amazing show. And his show is Scotty Talks About. And he always has some amazing guests on his show. I'm not sure who is on his show this week. But again, it's on Shadow Hunters Paranormal Investigations and Events at 7 Central. And then we have Devin Evans on Thursday with her amazing show. And I'm not sure what her topic is. So we'll just be all surprised on Thursday when it's announced. And then on Friday, we have Greg Koss. And it's called the Shadow Hour. Again, it's on Shadow Hunters Paranormal Investigations and Events. Nick, you're going to have to get me a big old sign so I can just read it. I'll just hold it up. Maybe that's what I'll do next. I'll just hold it up and everybody can see it.
I honestly, I have to think about, okay, it's paranormal investigations and then events. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really long one. So be sure to
Yeah.
check everybody's show out. There are some amazing topics and they have some amazing guests on the shows every week. And be sure to also check out the Psychics Unite YouTube channel. If you can help us get to at least 100 for now, so we can get our custom URL name, that would be amazing. And also check out our the website too, psychicsunite.com. That's where you'll find all the information. And if you're not on Facebook, or you know somebody who isn't on Facebook, but they would like to be part of the Psychics Unite meeting, you can go there and it's on the very front page. You can click on that. It'll take you to Zoom where you can be part of the group. And don't forget to check out all of Devin's stuff, devinevans.com. If you want a reading or anything else, she's an amazing teacher as well. So
thank you so much.
You are so welcome. Thank you so much for being part of the show. It's been great seeing everybody and talking with everybody. And I hope you will come back again next Sunday. And I hope you'll go back and check everybody else's shows out next week. So with that, we are going to end it and have a great Sunday evening.
Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.